Hello, every NASCAR fan out there that actually watches this shit. We're back. We have an announcement at the end of this podcast, and we're going to give you a small little tidbit on New Hampshire. I'm Herden.
I'm Carbon.
I'm in a very noisy caboose because I'm recording some new footage for All on a Wheel.
There you go. So, what we're going to do is let Carbon kind of give you the teeny tiny little rundown. There wasn't really any news this week. And then we're going to go on to our announcement. This is going to be a very short podcast. And
Very short.
you can give us comments and let us know what you think about it because the race has been really boring. So, take it away, Carbon.
Yeah. Oh, with New Hampshire. We had a Toyota dominant race. Stage 1 went to Truex. So that's his 19th. Stage 2 went to Kyle Busch. I don't know how many he has, but it's a lot. The final went to Kyle Busch, Larson, Kenseth, Brad, and Truex. So literally no surprise up there in the top 5 whatsoever.
Absolutely not.
And then we had pretty much... I mean, there was a couple cautions, but there was really only one caution that was notable, and it was a really weird one. Austin Dillon hit Harvick. I don't know which turn it was. It was either the exit of 4
Turn
or
2.
2. And spun him around.
Caused a
Harvick
wreck
tried
down the
to
straightaway.
save it. Yeah. Harvick tried to save it from hitting the wall. Did manage to save it. Came to a dead stop, but there was so much smoke on the track that nobody could see anything.
Nobody could see a damn thing.
Days of Thunder.
Junior
level.
spun himself trying to avoid.
Yeah.
Truex got hit by Jeffrey Earnhardt trying to avoid. And then Kurt Busch Kurt Busch plowed into the side of
Baba Boosh.
Harvick.
And
literally
then
got his
after
car
it all
stuck.
had subsided, Dale Earnhardt Jr., who was spun around, with very little damage, and Truex, with very little damage, backed into each other trying to get turned around.
Yep. So the Earnhardts were the end of Truex. Started with
Pretty
Jeffrey,
much.
ended with Dale.
Yeah, that's about the way it went.
It was weird. A couple cars managed to just slide between Harvick and the wall. I think Kyle Busch and Allmendinger both hit the wall when they were trying to slide through. So it was interesting.
And
But that was
race
about the
winner,
only interesting part of the entire race.
a Toyota yet again.
Yeah, there's been a little drama between Brad and Toyota.
Just a little
I don't
bit.
blame him. Because
I mean, everybody.
Penske has
There's
good
always a
equipment.
manufacturer that's dominant. Or a specific driver.
And not as dominant as it's been this season. Larson's the only Chevrolet that's even up there, and Brad is the best Ford, and it not even close. But, anyways, on to the announcement. If we had more exciting races, we would want to continue this podcast every week. But unfortunately, we are doing 20, 30, 40-minute podcasts, and
Races.
there's
Mostly news.
it's mostly news, yes, and there's just nothing exciting about the race anymore. You got one or two incidents and stuff like that, and we're putting too much effort into doing this podcast and not actually talking about the race. The news is going to be a separate segment from now on. So news will come at a different time. If the race is bad, it will be an every 3 race thing. That's the way we're going to run it through the rest of the chase. So there will be a
Playoffs.
podcast next week. And so we'll have the podcast next week. We'll have the podcast 3 weeks from now, and we will have another podcast 3 weeks from then, and then the homestead and the follow-up. And then if we hear anything, there will be podcasts following that in off-season. And then you will have your pre-Daytona and stuff like that. Unless something
there's
big
a
happens.
very exciting race. Like, let's say Dover is an actual exciting race, we'll have a podcast next week. If there's a lot to talk about in it, like if there's actually stuff to
If it's like
discuss.
Indianapolis or Martinsville or something like that, then yes,
Yeah.
there will be a podcast. But when we've got so many boring races back to back to back to back, it's gonna be cut because it's too much effort on editing. It's too much effort on trying to figure out our time schedules and stuff like that. And so we're gonna go a different angle with it. But if there is a really good race, we will do a podcast for that specific race. But news is going to be separate from now on.
So is there if I just give a quick rundown on everything then?
Absolutely.
So basically, in a nutshell, for until the end of the season, we will only do coverage of either a lot of news that's happening, or we're gonna come in at the end of each knockout stage to just do a summary of all the races and any small bits of news. So, like, let's say we only find out where one driver's going next year that doesn't have a ride currently, we're going to hold off until then. But if we find about 2 or 3 drivers, then we'll go ahead and cover it because it'll cover up a big enough time frame.
And
then
we're
next
honestly
year-
tired about 40-minute podcasts for a race that sucked.
Yeah. So if the race was a damn good race, like you said with Martinsville or Indy, where it was just a clusterfuck and a half, and it was fun to watch, then we'll come in, we'll do an individual race. But for now, we'll just do end of each knockout round and do a summary of each race.
All podcasts from now on will
So
be under 20 minutes
that's-
long, except for the superlatives probably,
Yep.
and the over the wall. But
Yeah, some
So
behind the scenes
we are not
stuff.
canceling. We are not canceling. I do want to say
Bah-
that.
Yeah. Behind the scenes will still be a thing. And maybe a couple during the off season. But the Broken Shifter podcast is not going anywhere. We will be here for the off season. And that's probably where you're going to get the behind the scenes, and we're going to have to think up something to talk about during that. We might even talk
still
about
really
football.
fun to
Who the
talk
hell
about
knows?
and shit on Kyle Busch.
Yeah. So
Who knows?
That's
Maybe
what it's
we'll
gonna
even
be.
talk about Formula One since they start before NASCAR. We don't know.
yeah, it is just going to be a group collaboration on this. So basically, what we're saying is we can't see wasting 2 to 3 hours of our lives trying to put a podcast together for no reason when it's a shitty race. And we all agree on this, and this was a group decision. If the races get good, you'll get a podcast that week. So I guess that's about all we can say about it.
Yeah. So if you have any questions for us, let us know in the comment section below. If we have any news, we'll make sure we'll tweet it out at our respected Twitter handles. And
I'd like to add one thing into
Yeah.
there. If you've got a question you would like answered by one of us, Caboose, Carbon, or myself, Herden, if you want a question answered, our opinion, something that, whatever, don't
Do a
ask
Q&A
anything
session.
stupid, but
Next podcast.
yeah, like a Q&A, throw it down in the comments. We read them, believe it or not. And that will give us a reason to actually do a podcast, and it might be a longer one. And having said that, does anybody have any final thoughts on anything?
Well, we still got one more thing to do before we end this podcast.
Go for
Dover
it.
picks.
Oh, yeah, that's
yes.
right.
The thing we always.
I'll
end the
go
podcast
first since I never do. I never go first. I'm going to take Martin Truex Jr. as my main guy and McMurray as my dark horse.
Okay. Caboose.
Jimmy Johnson and Jamie Mack. I'll follow Herden on this one.
Okay. And
You
you
go
took
with
my
the
main
James.
pick. I'm also going with Jimmy, but I'm going with Chase. My secondary, I'm going Hendrick.
Oh,
What do you think?
full
He's
out
gonna
on the
put more
Chevy.
tape on the spoiler?
Maybe the concrete will pay off. The concrete, man.
Jimmy won the first over.
I mean, we've seen
This
some
is about the
pretty
time-
crazy stuff before.
This is about the time last year in
So-
the 2016 season when Jimmy started picking it back up again after a pretty bad summer.
All right. So, anyways, this is the Broken Shifter podcast. Sorry if anybody's disappointed, but I doubt anybody is. So, for the Broken Shifter podcast, I am Herden.
Probably.
And I'm your very noisy caboose.
Click, click,
And
click,
we
click,
will
click.
catch y'all at the next stage end or segment end, whatever
Oh,
you
yeah.
want to fucking call it.
Which I think
We'll
is
catch
next
you
week
in the
anyway.
round of 8 or 12 or 4. We'll find you sometime.
We will find you, and we will entertain you.
You didn't wash your hands.
Maybe. I need to go get the
Damn it.
soap.